let's talk about, so we've talked about number one, the early development and how those experiences create body responses in the brain. They create chemicals and they interrupt the sensory motor loop. Usually, I work with children a lot, and some kids, they sensory motor loop means you can actually play well, you can rest well, you can engage. And some kids, their sensory motor loop is as soon as there's sensation, they're motoring. And I think that describes what they call ADHD, or the inability to focus. But if you think of your spine, here's a little neuroanatomy. All the sensory nerves from the whole body. Go ahead and rub your legs for a minute. Rub your legs, brush your arms, brush up and over your head. We're taking in sensory input. Our movement is our sort of motoring, or our response to that sensory input. It can be an internal or it can be an external movement through space. That's what a sensory motor loop is. Now, if there's overwhelming sensation, and we look around and realize, oh, it's not safe to get angry in this house. We all keep our anger blocked up. And you want to get angry, but it would be against the family norm. You got to do something with that charge. So that's when it back bleeds down the sensory nerves and stores in the body. And that means the spine will very often freeze. And with attention deficit kids and hyperactive kids, I think what happens is the sensory input hits the frozen spine and bounces back into motoring. That they sense and motor so quickly they don't integrate the sensation, process it, and then have choice about their motoring. There's little teeny, like the anatomy lesson is, if you imagine your spinal cord, on each side you could take your little fingers like this as your spinal roots and put them on the sides of your body, and the back nerve root, if you wiggle your back finger, that's going to be your sensory gatherer. The sensory nerves actually gather and they come into the back nerve root there. It's on the side of the spine. And then they go through the little internuncial nerve in the middle and they go out the motoring nerve. So sense to motor is a flow. Sense to motor. So take a moment and use your perceptions. Look around and notice something that interests you. It could be the color or the shape or an object. And let yourself perceive it. See it. If it's physical, you can touch it. This is all how we make meaning of our life. And if we lose that perceptual ability, we're getting narrow and narrow in our resiliency. We're less able to tolerate sensation, sound, creative thought. We get a little wigged out. So I want you to understand now spatial shock and early unmet needs. A birth, such as a forceps birth, can actually set up power struggle because the baby wants to stay with the mom and the baby is getting pulled out. They're not finding their own push, they're stuck. So the trouble with these births, we call them a baby rescue theme. The good news is the baby got rescued or they might have died, right? But from the baby's perspective, the forceps were like this alien coming in and squashing their head. So take a breath if you've had that beginning. We don't want you to get activated. And then we see in our pictures, the babies here have isolation. The right picture, it's a horrible thing that's done in infancy to the young boys, is their little legs are strapped down and then circumcision is performed. And often now it's getting better. It's down to, I think, 50% in this country. It's been banned in the Netherlands. But I've worked with many adult men who have recovered body stories from that time frame. And it's such a sensory experience that can't motor. And it can produce emotional reactivity or a kind of overriding of the self. Now, we don't want to make any experience into a trauma. So if you've never thought about circumcision, don't make yourself worry about it now. But what we want to do is help any of the hidden stories come to the surface and become integrated so that they're not a forever trauma. We want to learn how to thrive. And the resiliency means that you actually integrate in your brain all that you've been and done, which may take some time, but you're integrating your life experience. And then you can be proactively protecting the idea that maybe babies don't need circumcision. You know, there's now organizations that have more literature about it, and you can get much more of an informed perspective, even faith-based. Some Jewish mothers put together some cultural rituals that could happen without the practice of the circumcision. And if you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend a DVD called The Cut. It's well done. It's a person's interviewing and documentary format, and it talks to rabbis and just brings the topic into your awareness without presenting it as a huge shock event. When you've been shocked, it's easy to present life as a shock. And then you would be shocking the people around you, right? You've ever been around people who are shocking the whole field with their expressions and their emotions? That doesn't integrate relating. That doesn't allow the repair of relationship. So here, just as a remember, infant needs must be met by adults. This regulates tone of the baby. Think about tissue tone. The extremes are high tone, and that can be very taut, or low tone, lethargic, and collapsed. You want to have a balanced tissue tone. That means your body's resilient. And there's a little game you can play. You can lie on the floor so that you're resting onto gravity, or lie on your bed and experiment with becoming high tone. Make yourself really tense and notice what happens to your body. Notice your eyes. If your eyes get high tone, you're likely to become vigilant and suspicious of others. Then go to the opposite, like a broken water balloon. Blah. Let yourself become low tone, and then notice, open your eyes, and if you care about anything. It's so easy to just get lethargic and apathetic when your tone is low. And then you can play with, as if you had a little dial. Push down into the bed or the floor and gather up some tone and find middle tone in your body. Once you experience middle tone, you can try to find middle tone in an argument, right? Or when you just got a big surprise, can you return to a balanced body-mind experience? Because you're giving yourself sensations and internal messages. And we want to find out what you tell yourself. So if you go into freeze response, think about this. This is my theory of dissociation. I love it. And I'm not supposed to tell you all this right now because we don't have time. So I'll have to just briefly share this one. But you have the freeze response. The nervous system has motoring, healthy recreation and play. It has rest and digest. So you're frozen and more energy still coming. That's like throwing a rock at ice. It cracks, or at a mirror, it breaks into pieces. This is brilliant because then the predator, you can jump from piece to piece and the predator can't catch you. At the basis, it's about predator-prey. And when you feel like you're the prey, you want to, freeze and then escape. And that's what dissociation is. It's an attempt to escape. Some people escape into highly creative thinking, but they're not in their body. They're flying all around. Some people withdraw into a cave inside, or they get sucked into the weight of the atmosphere around them, like a depressive state. And when it's really depressed and the brain thinks it's dying, and this is all my theory, this is not what I've read, that there is, in terms of there's 4 kinds of dissociation, and now I'm seeing maybe 5. And why that's important is you want to be able to find the people. Where did they go? I had to ask the boy in the pool, where are you? Because I knew he wasn't in his body. And he's like, oh, I'm up on the ceiling. So he must go there a lot, right? But then we played a game where he could actually learn to come into his body and relax. And after that one session in the pool, he was fine with sun lotion. He was fine rubbing his skin. He had had a tactile sensitivity that was causing him to dissociate. And so using the right tools can produce results in the body-mind.
Pumpkin.
So let's look some more here. So need shock. So needs are, it's the autonomic nervous system that's below thinking, but it's inside our perceptions and our brain filters. It's finding out, are we safe? Are we comfortable? If we're hungry, can we get some food? So when an infant has high arousal that's not soothed, they're going to have need shock. Shock is a little different than trauma. Trauma you can usually go towards and treat, the way I use the language and we use in pre and perinatal psychology. But shock, there's nobody available. So if you go towards someone who's in a shock state, they're going to go deeper into shock. And some people will act like nothing's happening, but they're in a state of shock. Maybe they're talking really fast and they have no idea. But it's high arousal. The body-mind freezes or dissociates. And without regulation, and sometimes that's where a mother or dad can help a child regulate, without this ability to relax, to hold space, to inhabit space, people use adaptive patterns and responses to reduce overwhelming stimuli. Now, I want to make sure, so needs, just to understand their basic primitive brain, body, safety, comfort, and they're relational. And it's the balance of going inward to recuperate. Please mute yourself. The new people, please mute. The balance of going inward to recuperate and come out for contact. It has to do with temperature and sound, enough stimulation, enough food, enough sleep, enough rest, enough contact. Contact is a need because we're mammals. Now, if you've had shock and trauma, you might not want contact, right? Or you might overly lean on others because you're not filled up inside yourself. And we need enough creativity, expression, improvisation, curiosity, and discovery. So in treating trauma, you want to find out about this stuff. What happened? What's the body story? And, it starts here. It starts with there's chemicals. It starts if there's stress. And no mother should ever blame themselves. Don't blame yourself for what happened. It's just an experience. But what you can do is help in the recovery. And that's the good news, because we've got the tools now to help that happen. There's the prenatal time. And my book, Birth's Hidden Legacy, is really about guiding you all through that understanding of prenatal, birth, and post-birth with case studies and, tools and treatment tools. But then there's the birth itself. So in the middle picture, you see, whoa, there's a C-section. That's a real surgery trauma. And that baby looks mad or terrified. I've worked with 6-week-olds, and they'll go through an emotional wave if the mom is coached to meet the baby's emotional expression. Then the baby feels met, and they'll get mad, then they'll get really sad, and then they'll forgive their mom. It's just fascinating. The baby just rests back into the mom's chest once the story's told. And if you've ever had a big event happen, you like to tell your friends until you integrate it. That's what the babies want to do. And that's why we learn to listen to the hidden stories behind difficult behavior. And so babies will learn, for me, I was in an incubator, like that bottom picture. Only I didn't get to lie on my side. I was flat on my back because they didn't know the protocols or what the impact was of having the baby splayed open. But it works with your hip sockets. Too much, you don't develop enough tone. But then how do you recover from that? Like over on the left, there's this little girl, she's drawn a picture of her mom and she's kind of curled up inside, trying to get back home. And maybe I think this was a picture of an adopted child. So you got to go back in there and sort of find your way. And how you make meaning of these experiences shapes your personality and your identity beliefs. So this is what you want to think about. Wow, do I always get into power struggles? Did I have a power struggle right at birth? Am I afraid of transitions? Does that have to do with being pulled out during my transition? And then there can be ancestral or cultural overwhelming experiences that are impacting the babies in utero, they're impacting early attachment, and we want to put those ancestral themes to rest. And we want to help you if you had a fearful dad or mom, you might be responding to energy that's not even yours, but it was in the prenatal womb. And you have to learn how to have your assessment and abilities and not take on or carry forward what's actually not yours. So in this applied neuroplasticity, that's what I'm calling this sort of rich stew of how do you help someone come out of complex trauma. You look at early development and you learn some of the skills that are body-based to help the brain go from primitive to more complex. And you want to be able to know when somebody's in what part of their brain. And again, you don't have to learn all this the way I did. I'm a somatic geek about it because I was so curious for my own healing. But having a basic understanding of the map is very helpful. And then you want to attune to precognitive experiences. How do you befriend? And again, this is not, what's the word? You don't want to specialize your past. Poor me. You don't want to be the victim. Or you want to, this happened to me, and so this is why my life is like this. That's not really a good use of your time here on this planet, and masking it isn't really helpful because as you age, you won't be able to mask it. You'll become at some point too tired of the mask. You won't be able to keep it up. But learning to follow and attune to the precognitive experience, to befriend it, and to bring implicit memory from the body to the surface, then it's explicit. We're starting to know the stories. That's when it gets uncomfortable. And then how do you use your breathing ball? How do you allow the discomfort so that these chemicals can actually release and reintegrate? That's what neuroplasticity is. It requires some neural pruning, meaning not using your protective response habits. And it requires you being in the driver's seat with the help of some guidance. Because it's you that your little young self is looking to ultimately for connection. And that's the integration of your young self with your secure adult self-attached. So look at your power struggles. Some people, I had one client for a year and a half, she would pick a fight with me every session. And she was born with forceps, and they were apparently used so forcefully that they wouldn't even show her to her mother for 4 days because her head was so bruised.
Oh my God.
Right? It's just, these things happen, and they're the hidden stories. So we got to laugh about it because she knew she would do it, and I got ready for it. Here's your power struggle. This is, you're trying to tell me how much your head hurt at your birth, and how much you were butting heads with the pressure of the forceps. But what is the story behind your eating disorder, or be kind as stressful, tied up in knots? There's stories there. And when you can get to the story, you can let go of the power struggle. Now, I have a little ebook. We don't have time to go into power struggles here so much. But briefly, victim, persecutor, rescuer. That will go round and round inside yourself, or you'll play it out with others until you learn to get off the power triangle. So this little ebook is there to help parents understand this, or to help you understand how to get off of that triangle, because it's very seductive. And a triangle shape, it's like the most geometrically stable shape. So once you're on the triangle, you're going to go round and round. You're not going to be able to get off it, actually. What I've learned is to teach people how to walk away from it, how to not get emotionally seduced. And when you're on it, how to notice it and get, don't do the behavior that it wants you to do. So take a moment, write down, what are your body beliefs, your emotional beliefs, your thoughts about the world. Some people have thoughts of shame. They have projections of not being good enough because maybe their mom didn't want another baby. It goes all the way back to even discovery time in infancy, the infant heart. In embryology, it's so exposed at 4 weeks. But what are yours? Get to know what's way deep in there and write them down so that it goes from implicit to explicit. And then the healing is participating with it. So you want to let the body metabolize experience and the brain integrate it. Find the hidden stories. Notice the energy you tend to put out in your body, and follow the developmental movement interventions. So look at some of your core beliefs. What are your identity beliefs? And do they serve you? Where do you think they started? I had a 6-year-old who I was treating. She was born premature, and she was having meltdowns at school. She brought in a little card she made me as we started to do some of this storytelling with the stuffed animals about her birth and all that. She brought in a little card that said on every page, "Bad baby." There was a little drawing of a box with a, stick figure baby in it with tears. And she wrote in her little 6-year-old writing, "Bad baby, bad, bad baby," every page. "I am such a bad girl." And it was heartbreaking. And I thought, that's not right. Babies aren't bad. Why would she come to that identity belief? And I thought about it for a while, and I thought, she had to do self-attack thinking. Now, why did she do that? Because she was in a situation that was uncontrollable in terms of senses and perceptions. She was poked and prodded. She couldn't find her mama. And this wasn't me. It happened to me too, but this was this little girl's experience. Fortunately, she was allowed to be on her mom's chest. When I was born, they wouldn't even let my mom in the room. And thank goodness times have changed. There's a lot of wonderful neonatologists doing beautiful headphone music work with babies, giving them certain pillows, understanding the rhythm of the premature one, because they do have a little different signature. But if you can understand for this self-attack thinking, she was keeping the fight response alive so she didn't die of infant depression. She would have self-attack because that's motoring. It's not, going towards death. And by self-attacking, she had a locus of control. She could find out that she existed. That was the way I understood the brilliance of self-attack thinking as a survival mechanism. Now, it's certainly not something you want to keep going because it exhausts the nervous system. So here's what you do when you're trying to heal implicit cellular memory and beliefs. You look for the physical, you look for the belief, you find the sensations, and you go toward it instead of away. Add breath and movement so that the experience can tell you what the emotions are. Don't believe it's happening and help yourself regulate. Push against the wall, breathe, have a drink of water, turn your head, let the wave of discomfort pass. That's secure, how you learn to be healthy and have secure adult self-attachment. Now, spatial shock, so that's number one. Do that. Number two is spatial shock, extrasensory radar. You feel something, but how do you know your perception is accurate? You don't. If you've got extrasensory radar, you're using your perceptual filters to almost read other people's minds, often to control the environment. It's great to have intuition, but ultimately you want to be able to rest inside your own hula hoop, not be anxiously vigilant out there. I worked with a couple for one session, and the guy was having affairs and they were still married after 26 years. And finally, I was noticing the woman's behavior and I was like, are you always this anxious? And what she was doing was she was totally tracking me with her perceptions. And it interrupts the house breathing. And I said, this anxiety can't let your home breathe. And sometimes that's why a husband has to seek comfort outside of the home. And the husband burst into tears. He was like, I never wanted this, but I could never relax at home. It was the awareness of her part in creating the field that produced the behavior. And fortunately, it came to that place because they love each other. And now, if she can control this, we might call it anxious attachment, the house can breathe and he can relax at home. So he doesn't have to go out to find a place of comfort and relaxation. So you want to check, is your radar, tease the shock off, and then it can be healthy intuition. But you don't want to have projection. So how you work to heal spatial shock is you measure. Spatial shock can be an interpretation of the energy field, often based in danger, fear, anger, has protective response patterns. It thinks it's right, but it can actually hurt others. And does it help or hurt the field, the shared space? Does it help you? So here's what you want to do. And if you have extrasensory radar, you probably know if you have it. It can be a kind of hypersensitivity. Does it ever get you into trouble? How much energy do you need to feel safe? And are you overreacting or are you numbing out? So you're not actively supporting your hula hoop. So now you can think about that, and I want to teach you how to heal spatial shock. I wish I had more time with you. I'm doing pretty good, actually. We still have our time for question and answer. So, I didn't make that slide. I'm going to teach you how to do it right now. So what you do, an infant measures time and space. And they lie on their belly. They don't really know. They're still learning to inhabit their body. They push down into the floor a little bit, and that lifts their head, and they see objects. Oh my goodness, their curiosity is awake. So they push, they reach, they have curiosity. Oh, and then that curiosity wants to come into relationship with the object, and they have to learn to reach, take hold, and pull. And babies, they put everything in their mouth, and that's how they assess. So I want you to do this practice. You can do it sitting right now, and then try it again on the floor. But you have to imagine you're back in early primitive brainstem. You don't have all this superpower, higher cortex working for you. You have much more of sensation and experience. And take your hand and just put it to your mouth or brush it against your cheek and put another hand on your tummy. And suck a little bit on the back of your tongue for a minute. This is what a baby does in their sucking reflex, is they take things in, which gives them more parasympathetic, which relaxes hypertone. So now find something on your desk or something, and first use a soft gaze. Keep your hand at your mouth, keep sucking at the back of your tongue, and just, scan a little, and then find something that gets your curiosity. Once you find it, look at it. Not over intently so you're out of your body, but in that soft, keep dropping in your brain. And now, explore how, if you didn't know how would you get your hand over there? I want you to slow it down and imagine, and I want you to feel space. Your hand is traveling through space. So I want you to measure it. I want you to measure time and distance. I want you to take your hand slowly. The baby's working hard to figure this out. Slowly. Watch your hand, not the object, because that will help you self-reference. And, notice your hand as it gets closer to the object. You feel a little excitement. That's arousal. It's like, oh. And then let your hand grasp the object. And so feel the touch and the weight of it, whatever it is. Feel the shape, the weight, the touch. Now, notice what you have to do to actually bring the object to you. And if you're a baby, you're going to have to push. You're going to have to yield and take the object. Then you're going to have to push down into the floor. So push leads to reach, take hold, and then you're going to pull. And now feel the pull, as if you're learning about gravity and weight. Your object is traveling through space. You're having to pull it through space back to you. And then the baby would just put it right in its mouth. And then it would yield and relax. So do get my Satisfaction Cycle free PDF. It's in my free PDF library at anniebrook.com. It'll guide you through this practice, but it's very helpful for healing spatial shock. I've had clients sitting in a chair in my office do it, and their whole field relaxes. And then they practice inhabiting space rather than flying off into space and leaving their body behind. But to be present and inhabit space helps heal complex trauma.